Boxwoods are another one that you want to prune. Boxwoods you can prune in season. Every time they put on a flush of growth, you can prune them back by about 50%. Once or two, and sometimes you might want to prune them by more than that. One of the things that we don't want you to do is, if you're planning on putting boxwood in as a hedge, and that goes for almost all hedge material, don't let it get to the size you want it to get to, and start pruning it then. Because what happens is you end up with, plants grow fairly rapidly when they're younger. The stems will not be really thick, so you're going to end up with fairly weak stems. And this goes back to the cedars and stuff that are opened up. Generally what will occur is if you do something like that, you end up with a lot of weak growth. You start topping them at the top, and then they start breaking at the top. So you've got this thin stem and all this foliage up above, which is not structurally very sound. But that's basically what you'll end up with. So most people will let their plants grow to 3 feet and start pruning them with boxwood, because that's what you want. You want a 3-foot boxwood. It's better to prune your plants every year so they're good and solid and dense, so that by the time you get to 3 feet, they've got really thick, sturdy branches. They're structurally sound, and they can hold the weight of the snow. Same as cedar trees. If you prune the tops of your cedars every year, and you can do them twice a year, you can do them in the spring. You can also do them about mid-August, because they'll push on a lot of growth during the summer. Those stems will be sturdy, they'll be strong, and the foliage will be tight on those guys, and then they won't open up. Usually when plants start opening up, it's because they haven't been pruned properly, and there's excessive juvenile growth at the top, which is not structurally sound. So that's why when we're trying to get you to do any kind of hedging, is we want you pruning from day one. We don't want you to go in and start pruning when they're finished. When it comes to boxwood, things like this, simplest thing to prune them with is just hitched shears, especially when they're big. And all we're trying to do is basically just round them up. And you can use hand shears as well. But that's all you do. And then you're going to do that now, most likely. And you'll probably do it again in July. You do it twice a year. And if you do it twice a year, it'll be nice and tight. And the new growth that comes on from the 1st of August on will only be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. So it's going to be really solid. We don't like pruning a lot of hedging much after the 1st of August, but if you prune up to the 1st of August, you'll still get new growth to cover up where you pruned, but it'll be really good and sturdy and solid, and that's kind of what you're aiming. On pruning things like boxwood hedges and cedar hedges, we show an angle way to prune them. It's nice to have a nice, straight, solid hedge where I think men are probably more. It's tougher to get them to do this than the ladies, but we like things linear. We like them perfectly straight, and we top them like this. That works really great when the plant's small. But as the plant gets larger, especially when you have a hedge that runs east-west, the sun is to the south, what happens is you get a lot of hollowing at the bottom of a lot of your hedges because there's not enough light getting in. You know, obviously if you have a 6 or 8 foot hedge and you have it perfectly straight, there's not going to be as much light getting to the base of that plant on the north side. So it's a little bit nicer if you can put a bit of a bevel on them so that all of the foliage on the north side gets a little bit of sun. You'll stop that caving out, and it really tends to be more of an issue generally on boxwood. Cedars are a little easier that way, but if you have just a gentle slope on your hedge, it's not noticeable when you look at it. But especially on the north side, it will keep your hedge a lot thicker and a lot fuller because it allows more sun and light to penetrate into that side. So that's another thing that you look at, especially as your hedges get larger, that you're going to want to do, because it does stop them from falling out to a certain degree. This time of year, you're going to see a lot of ugly grasses, especially this year. The snow, perennials, bananas. A lot of these, what we call herbaceous type perennials, this time of year look really unsightly. And this is the most important time to clean up a lot of that kind of stuff in your garden. This is an astilbe, and it's really quite simple to clean up. If we don't do it, what will soon happen is, because these guys push foliage very quickly, you're soon going to have all your green foliage in here. Then getting rid of this ugly stuff becomes a lot harder because you kind of got to cut it out so you don't damage the new growth. Now this time of year you can either break it off or you can just prune them right flat to the ground because there is no new growth. You're better off just to clean them up, cut them right back. Peonies would be the same thing, irises, grasses, any of your perennials that have existing foliage left from last year that produce new growth from the base, you're going to want to cut them back good and hard. Grasses, pampas grass, those kind of things, again, really important, because if we leave this grass here and wait for a month, and all of a sudden the new grass is up to this height, we're kind of stuck in that, you know, like it's hard to get this stuff out, but it looks really ugly. But if we cut the grass off, then it's going to take another 2 months for it to start to look good. So you really want to do it this time of the year. Get them pruned up, get them cleaned up. Other things with grasses, I'm a bigger believer in with a lot of grasses, is prune them in the fall. And here's another issue too. With grass, I like to prune them in the fall before they die back too much, and they're a bit of a fire hazard. It's clean and it stops them from blowing all over your yard. Another thing that people have to realize with grasses, because they're so popular now, a lot of grasses are really showy when they have all the seed pods and the new foliage on them. Grasses produce a lot of seed. That produces a lot more grass. So if you're putting grasses in your flower beds and you don't want a lot of new grass growing all through the rest of your flower bed, you're going to want to prune off those seed heads before they start to drop, because those, you know, the idea with those is grasses produce seeds and they produce again more grasses. So I'm a bigger believer in the fall. As soon as those grasses are kind of past their point of showiness, is to cut them back then, and especially cut the seed heads off, because at least they'll stop them from making a mess of your garden. So that's a fairly important thing. Bananas, there's going to be a lot of really ugly looking bananas this year because of the cold winter we've had. There's going to be a lot of fairly tattered looking phormium or New Zealand flax, those kind of things. All the bananas produce new growth out of the center, and they also produce new growth out of the base. The way these guys grow is they sucker from the base and they'll produce new growth out of there. If it's this kind of shape and it hasn't really frozen back hard, I just cut off all of the foliage at this time of year and let them go. I'm going to have some that have frozen back harder. And you can tell that because it's kind of floppy in here. With those kind of ones, you're just going to want to cut them off at the base. Although the top is dead, the roots are still alive and they will send out new shoots down below. So you can gain a little bit of height if you've protected them at all. Generally, most of them this year are going to be pretty much dead to the base. You just want to cut them off and let the new growth come from the bottom again. So a lot of cleanup in the garden this time of year, like especially all your perennials, things like that. You really want to get them cleaned up now while they're still dormant. It makes it so much quicker and simpler than waiting until they send out new foliage. The other nice thing is when you're pruning stuff like this and they're dormant, it's really easy to rake and clean it up when you're done too as well. You're not going to be disturbing anything in the growth for the coming year.